The last light dies outside the basement-level sanctuary, that pocket universe tucked beneath Murphy's Tavern where plastic cups hold more sacred meaning than crystal goblets. Wendy descends the narrow staircase like priestess entering temple, knees screaming their titanium gospel with each step down, the pinched sciatic nerve announcing itself as it always does when the days swallowed too much of her marrow. Miguel stands behind the bar, his 40-year-old face tilted toward the amber glow of bourbon bottles backlit like stained glass in some godless church. His wedding ring catches the light as he reaches down, pulling a bottle of cognac from the third shelf. Expensive. Cognac that tastes like old libraries and darker truths. The bottle's throat releases a sound like sigh when Miguel uncorks it, pouring 2 fingers over ice with surgical precision. Is the day treating you like shit? Miguel's voice carries that particular smokiness that made Della fall hard 15 years ago, that childlike quality that makes people trust him with their darkest confessions. Wendy settles onto the bar stool, accepting the glass. The cognac's gold catches her eye first. Too bright, too clean for how she feels inside. She sips it. Velvet and pepper, caramel notes wrapping her tongue like warm forgiveness she hasn't earned yet. Yeah, one of my kids came home crying from school. Some asshole said gender fluid was just trying to be special. I wanted to... Wendy stops, jaw clenching. She takes another pull of cognac, letting it burn. Miguel doesn't nod. He just waits. That's what 15 years with Della taught him. Sometimes silence holds more space than words ever could. Sage stands back from the large brick wall in the corner, the wall Della and Miguel had specially sealed and primed 3 months ago. A canvas meant for community art, meant for the collective voice of everyone who descended into this basement-seeking asylum. Tonight, Sage has painted for 6 consecutive hours, colored pens in every hue conceivable bleeding across that wall in patterns that shouldn't work, but absolutely do. The painting sprawls across almost 20 feet of brick, a mandala framework exploding outward with queer history, threading through its architecture like illuminated veins. Stonewall riots rendered in hot oranges and violent reds. Act Up poster children screaming in constructed greens. Marriage certificates forming borders in pale blues and purples. The AIDS quilt represented through carefully constructed patches, each one containing names, some famous, most forgotten, all equally devastating. Rainbow pride flags in every position, some triumphant, some tattered, some held by hands that belonged to people dead for decades. But the center, the absolute heart of this massive piece, held something quieter. A tree. Not a decorative metaphor tree, but a real tree rendered in charcoals and blacks, with roots spreading downward into soil colored like blood and earth combined. The roots tangled with initials, with dates, with tiny carved hearts. From branches, ribbons hung, actual ribbons, attached by Sage to painted branches, some bearing handwritten names in dozens of different handwriting styles. Phoenix's name, Gizmo's, in Wendy's careful script from a note she'd slipped Sage last week. Miguel and Della's names intertwined. Names of the dead, names of the living, names of people who tried and failed and tried again. Sage stood back from this, really stood back, took 3 full steps away from the wall, colored pens set down in neat little rows, reds separated from blues, greens clustered with their families, blacks and grays organized like soldiers standing at attention. Their asexual aromantic frame seems to be doing math the rest of the world can't calculate, running numbers against canvas and time and the immeasurable weight of representation. Eric walked over to Sage. Eric from the factory with his thick shoulders and his coated male performance carried like armor. He'd arrived fresh from the second shift, still wearing the safety vest, still smelling like hot machinery and the particular despair that comes from hearing men joke about wives they resent, while you're trying to figure out how to tell your own wife that some parts of yourself still need living. Holy shit. Are those real names? 73, Sage answered, their voice that particular texture of someone speaking after hours of silence. Rough, economical, perfect. 73 people I could identify. Some I know personally. Some I know through community history. Some I read about last week and knew I couldn't sleep without putting them here. Lisa had come up from the bar area, the farm girl lesbian in her late 50s who'd spent decades married to the wrong person before finally leaving. She carried a wine glass filled with cheap Merlot, the liquid dark as old bruises. Practical woman, practical clothes. But her eyes were red-rimmed and swimming with something that looked like recognition meeting regret. They knew what they were doing, Lisa said, gesturing toward the painting. The old queers, I mean. The ones who survived when surviving meant dying quietly or not at all. They knew this had to happen. They built scaffolding for people like us to climb. Danny emerged from the back room where Dell had been teaching her a gumbo recipe, something about blood orange and protest existing in the same pot, about fury and food being inseparable in Creole tradition. Danny's scarves dragged across the floor, her crystals catching light in ways that shouldn't be beautiful but were. Her voice when she spoke carried that bridge-building quality, the way she could make intersectional justice sound like love instead of doctrine. Every person sees themselves. That's the thing about good memorial work. It doesn't speak at you. It speaks through you. Sage made something that lets everyone find their grief at the same time they find their continuity. Wendy stayed planted on the bar stool, watching. The cognac burned its way into her stomach, warming the cold spaces where today had left its fingerprints. Miguel set down a fresh glass without asking. Second one, already knowing this night would require two. Remy wandered over from the corner table where he'd been telling stories, his half-French Cajun accent thick as bayou fog. His cigarette dangled from lips like promise of fire, exhaling philosophy with smoke. Mon Dieu, this is what my mama meant when she talked about feeding people. You feed bodies with gumbo, you feed souls with this. Both kinds of hunger exist in the same person. Grubby sat perfectly still in the oversized armchair, their intersex body curled into space like they were trying to take up less room, even though they deserved more. Their quiet presence had become anchor to this room, their silence holding more truth than louder voices often managed. They looked at the wall for a long time before speaking, and when they did, their voice carried the particular authority of someone who'd been erased systematically. I'm not on it. Intersex people usually aren't in queer history unless we're being weaponized to prove something. This feels different. This feels like Sage made space. Sage turned from the wall then, turned away from their own creation, and something in that gesture felt sacred. Like a priest stepping back from altar, trusting the sacred space doesn't require their presence to hold power. You're in the tree, the roots, the ones that look fractured but still hold the whole thing up. That's where intersex history lives. Not visible unless you're looking for it. Not erased unless people choose erasure. Just holding everything together quietly while nobody names it. Renee stood up from where she'd been bench-pressing arguments about queer representation in mainstream media, all massive muscle and unfulfilled longing rippling through tank top. She walked to the wall like pilgrim approaching shrine, her hand reaching out but not touching, reverential, the way she only got around things that mattered. Her voice, when it came, was smaller than her body. I've been trying to figure out how to live, trying to figure out what it means to be this strong when what I really need is someone interested in my softness. This painting, it looks like what I feel. All these people stacked up, interdependent, holding each other without needing to break anything. I don't know how to be that. Brandon had been sketching on a napkin, always sketching, always transforming observation into publishable essay, but now he set down his pen. His more successful writing always felt like a thing between them, unspoken, acknowledged in the careful way Wendy treated his presence. Tonight, though, his hands were still, which meant something was breaking inside his wit armor. Sage made everyone visible. That's the writing I can't do. I transform experience into something publishable, something palatable for audiences. Sage just put it all here. Unfiltered, uncompromised. This is how you honor the dead. You don't make them pretty. You make them present. Miguel refilled Wendy's glass without asking. That's what marriage teaches. When to move without seeking permission. When silence is yes. When did Sage start painting? Wendy asked Miguel, her voice rough from the day's wait. 2 hours after River called from the hospital, Miguel said quietly. Some kid came through, 16, still in assigned male at birth, got beat up pretty badly by father who just wanted to straighten him out. River's been there all day trying to stabilize him. Phoenix completely fell apart. Trauma meeting, fresh trauma, you know? And Sage just started moving, started putting things down, like they were building fortress out of pain and pens and collective memory. The bass shifted. The sound system cycled through tracks, and now Pink Floyd's Mother came through the speakers. That particular opening that made every parent in the room remember the weight of their own mothers, the ways they'd been shaped by maternal hands, both gentle and destroying. Wendy's eyes went hot. Her throat closed. She thought about Gizmo, 2 hours away, probably studying psychology instead of coming home for weekend. She thought about Charlie saying some asshole called them trying to be special. She thought about Alexander's careful analytical mind, trying to logic hatred into submission when hatred operates outside reason's jurisdiction. She thought about all the ways she'd failed as mother, and all the ways the sanctuary had become the family these kids chose when biological family betrayed them. Sarah the Stoic walked over, pressed flannel and philosophical certainty, moving with methodical precision. She looked at the wall with the same expression she wore during chess games, calculating depth, appreciating architecture. Every culture creates sacred spaces, temples, shrines, memorial walls. They're not decoration, they're necessity. Humans need to see themselves reflected back by something larger than individual loneliness. This is that. Sage made visible what we carry invisible. Kira emerged from the back corner where she'd been reading. She always read at the bar, absorbing conversations while seeming detached, present through her careful attention. Her voice carried the precision that made Wendy fall in love with her 16 years ago, the way she could cut through emotional chaos with surgical clarity. The dead are still teaching us. This canvas proves it. Sage didn't paint history. Sage painted inheritance. Everything we have, every freedom we're learning to claim, exists because people died for it, usually while the world called them disposable. Eileen burst through the door like she carried weather inside her suit jacket. Fast resistor energy radiating from her flight attendant frame, kinetic urgency that suggested she'd just witnessed another human rights violation from 30,000 feet. Her eyes found the wall and she stopped mid-stride. God, fuck, this is... Eileen's voice pitched high the way it did when upset, which meant constantly. This is what organizing looks like. This is what you do when you can't let them disappear into statistics. You paint their names. You make them impossible to ignore. Bubba sat by the window like he always did, mountain of muscle and Georgia memory, looking at the painting with the particular stillness that came from surviving what should have destroyed him. His deep voice rumbled like tectonic plates when he finally spoke. 40 years I spent trying to be invisible. Growing up black and gay in 70s, Georgia meant learning that visibility could kill you. Now I look at something like this and realize the people who needed invisibility to survive, they're the ones whose names need painting most. Sage knows this. Sage is making erasure impossible. Jian Chen stood in the corner, Phoenix's mother trying humbly to rebuild what her husband's abuse destroyed. She'd been quiet all evening. She was always quiet, centuries of violence teaching her that speaking invited punishment. Now she whispered something in Chinese, then again in English. I see her name. Phoenix. She's on the wall. My daughter's name is on the wall with history, with honor, with... Her voice broke. She couldn't finish. She didn't need to. Phoenix found her in the crowd, gender-fluid child with hair like lightning captured in purple and silver streaks, rings gleaming like armor pieces. They took her trembling hands not with forgiveness. Forgiveness was too simple for the canyon between them, but with presence, with being seen, with acknowledging that broken things sometimes rebuild into something stronger than they were before. Sage stood back and looked at the painting again, just stepping away from their own creation, and something in that gesture told Wendy everything about what art making really meant. It wasn't about ego or completion. It was about creating space where people could cry and rage and remember and organize and survive one more day, knowing they weren't alone. Miguel set down another cognac and Wendy didn't protest. The liquor gold gleamed in basement light, promises and bruises suspended in alcohol. To Sage, for making the invisible visible, for honoring the dead while we're still learning to honor ourselves. The bar raised glasses. Not formal toast. More intimate than that. More organic. the kind of moment that happens when people stop being individuals and become constellation, united in witness, united in memory, united in the particular fury that comes from loving people the world refuses to count. Sage didn't look embarrassed. They just picked up their colored pens again, began organizing them for next time, for the next memorial that would need building, the next history that would need painting, the next person who would need to see their name reflected back as proof that they mattered, that they existed, that they belonged to something larger than their own small survival. Outside, the world continued its particular cruelty. Inside the sanctuary, beneath Murphy's Tavern on forgotten downtown streets, people looked at a wall and saw themselves alive. We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams. O'Shaughnessy, in a basement sanctuary beneath Murphy's Tavern, Sage understood what the poet meant. The dead teach through presence rather than voice, through painted names and ribbons and roots that hold fractured things together. To honor queer history isn't to prettify or palette shift trauma into something digestible. It's to make the invisible visible, to paint memorial until erasure becomes impossible. Every person stacked into that canvas, visible and interconnected, becomes proof that loneliness is the lie we're told. The sanctuary exists because someone had to create space where the dead and living could exist in shared constellation, where names become inheritance, where survival transforms into sacred act.